Welcome back to Bearded Prince. Hey, today guys, just as I promised, we are going to be doing the first in the series of Can I Beginner Recreate This? Today I'm going to be painting up the model that comes with the Squidmar Essentials pack. It is a nice dwarf, and we shall name him Drod. I found some random Lord of the Rings dwarf name generator, and that's what came up. That's what we're going to go with. Yep. So we're going to paint Drod and come up with his backstory. So let's go get the paints, get the brushes, and get everything ready. So now that we've freed Drod from the confines of the sprue and got him all glued up, it would look like he is just a harmless little guy out there collecting wood to keep his house warm during the winter. But you would be very mistaken, my friends. This here is a serious dwarf. But before we get into his story, let's get some paint on the wet palette and get going. And here is the one and only issue I've had with the paint set. This bottle seemed to have some leakage either during the sealing process or in shipping, but it didn't seem to cause any issues, aside from causing the label to be slightly unreadable. There are also a few others that when I opened them, they had some dried paint in the nozzle, so I had to use a paper towel to make sure I didn't have a clog and wind up with way more paint than I wanted on the palette. I also added the dark rust, shiny skin tone, and Cayman green to the palette. So I base coated the entire log in dark rust. I know it's hard to see with the miniature prime black, but there is actual color going down. Also, I just want to say that some of the video is more blurry than I wished. I'm currently filming on my wife's Nikon D750. So I'm hoping that it was just me not having proper lighting for what the camera required. And worst case, I will put my iPhone 16 in airplane mode if the lighting is still an issue in the future videos. So once the log is base coated, I mix some sunny skin tone, aiming for about a 50-50 mix. I use this mix to apply my first highlights to the age rings. I was able to make out some of the details in the end of the log, but in the end, I did make the attempt to add some more, as this one didn't seem to have as many as the tutorial video. I started highlighting the bark of the log, trying to leave some of the base color showing, just to show some texture. So about Drod here. He may appear he's just a lowly guy gathering some wood, but in reality, he was once a mighty warrior, and even fought in the Battle of the Five Armies. But he has since moved on from his days as a warfighter, and now, more than 50 years later, he spends his days relaxing with his wife and 3 kids. His mighty axe now fells trees in one fell swoop instead of orcs. So now we move on to the face. I'm using a 50-50 mix of the burnt red and skin tone. And now, as I hesitate for a second, in the words of the immortal Bob Ross,
you have to make a big decision.
So, decision made, and off we go on the skin for the first time. I did notice it was quite difficult to differentiate where his skin ended and his eyebrows began, and you'll see that in the end product. But we move on. So we're adding the paint to the face, his hands, and his feet as the base coat. For the first highlight, I'm taking the current skin mix and adding about 50% skin tone And the idea was to add that to the upper parts of his forehead, the top of his nose, and his cheeks. This also goes for the top of his hands and his feet, leaving only the base color showing kind of where I want the shadows to be. For the final highlight, I added just a bit more of the skin tone and only added that to the places like the tip of his nose, the top of his forehead, and his hands where they're facing skyward. And here is what it looks like so far. Now, for that mighty beard, I added some dark rust and parasite brown to the palette. Then I started with a base coat of dark rust and applied it to his beard, the belts, boots. Then I mixed in about 50% parasite brown for the first highlight. Applied that to about 80% of the beard, his eyebrows, his hair. And then for the final highlight, I just added a little bit more of the same parasite brown and only painted that on the center of his beard, the bit of his braid on his beard, and the little hangy down braids by his ears. So onto the tunic, and the entire tunic is painted in Cayman green. Then I loaded some lime green for the highlights. The lime green, as I'm told by the tutorial, is very transparent. So there's no need to mix it with any of the Cayman green. I just did a thin coat for my first highlight, and then the second coat for a second highlight, I just added a little bit more over where I had painted just to make it a little bit brighter. For the hood, I used a mix of dark rust and parasite brown that we already had going, but I added a bit of pale flesh for some of the highlighting. I also used this mix for his leg warmers and wristbands. And then for the base, I used a dark green as well as for the leaves. And then I actually wound up highlighting them with a ice yellow. And on the base, I actually added 2 layers of highlights, whereas the leaves on his neck, I only added 1 because really tiny. Lastly, for his orb, Drod keeps a good old orb on hand, both to light his way and to keep away creatures from the woods that would prey on anyone foolish enough to venture off into the darkness. I used the same colors as I did for his beard, but this time I added more of the parasite brown into the dark rust mix. And for the second highlight, I added some ice yellow. And then finally, I made a attempt to glaze a slightly darker version of the final mix to kind of try and tie it all together. And there you have it, folks. Drod the Dwarf is ready for the tabletop or display case. This little guy was fun as hell to paint. It took me about 5 hours of painting time to get there, but that also includes referencing tutorial video, starting and stopping recording, so I had place markers for where I was during the entire build. But this was my first attempt at doing skin tones and non-metallic metal, and I will take it. So how would you guys say it compares to the tutorial model? I can see where I definitely have some areas to improve, and some cases that actually came out better than I expected, like the tunic and the leaves came out tremendously better than I thought they were going to. Let me know in the comments how you think it went, and drop any hints or tricks in the comments below. I do make every attempt to try and engage with the comments left, so have at it, guys. And while you're down there in the comments section, hit that like and subscribe button, because it drives that algorithm and helps get this video in front of more people. Now that it isn't 50 degrees in my office due to the recent cold snap here in Minnesota, it's time to start tackling the next Squidmar paint tutorial, the model from the Dark Futures pack. I want to thank everyone that hung on till the end, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.